Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock on a Saturday, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I could not be more excited because today on the channel, I have one of my favorite performers of all time, somebody who is absolutely incredible. He has literally written the book over and over again when it comes to mentalism. I have studied his work. I'm a huge fan. He is a creator, a performer, an innovator, one of the most respected people in magic and mentalism, and incredibly busy. So I'm so excited he's found time to come on the channel. This is going to be awesome. I have here with me the one and only, the legend, Marc Paul. Marc, how you doing? You okay?
Well, wow, I'm blown away. I don't think I can live up to that intro in any shape or form, but you're very kind, Craig. Thank you very much for having me. Listen, I'm just a jobbing pro. That's all I am. I'm just out there working, making a living.
Oh, I've been a huge fan of yours for such a long time. I'll never forget when I bought your Alakazam Academy, which was incredibly long, like
Yeah.
incredibly long. And I literally just took 2 days off and just sat there and binged it for 2 days. I just watched the whole thing. I was just making notes and
Yeah,
scribbling down.
glutton for punishment. Yeah, I think it's almost 9 hours long, something like that. And I know Jamie Dawes has been sort of messaging me saying, oh, come back and do another academy, and I'm like, I don't know if I've got anything to say. It's all there. The thing with me is I just put out stuff that I do. I'm not really a creator. I mean, I am a creator when it comes to my own act, my own performance pieces, but they're very much formed by the environments that I work in. Whether it was trade shows or whether it's corporate or cruise ships or whatever. So I just draw on my knowledge, draw on my books, and
Mhm.
put together stuff that I feel works for me. So this is why I don't bring out tons of stuff. I just try and bring out the stuff that interests me, that's useful to me, and maybe useful to others. But yeah, that Alakazam Academy, I'm quite proud of. There's a lot of good thinking on there. There's a lot of good ideas.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was fun to do as well. They're great guys.
No, Alakazam are wonderful. And here's what I want to do. I can't imagine there's anybody watching this that hasn't heard of you, but just in case there is, we're going to start at the very beginning and very
Okay.
quickly kind of look at your origin story and how you got into magic. Because I've never heard this story. I've read a lot about you, obviously, and I've read interviews before, but I don't think I've ever heard how you got into magic. So, what did that look like? Where did this
Yeah,
journey begin?
I got given a magic set. I think I was about 7, 8 years old, something like that. My uncle bought me a Hocus Pocus Junior #2 or something like that. I think it was called. I've still got the props. I don't have the cardboard box, but I still have the props. And the interesting thing was, I opened the box, totally disappointed, totally, what this is all rubbish, and it got thrown up in the cupboard. Literally, there was no real magic, Craig, no real magic. It was all
Hmm.
silly bits of plastic and things. And anyway, so a few weeks later, I had a cold or something. I was off ill from school, bored. My mum's gone out to work. There's no one in the house. I'm just in bed, don't know what to do. So climb up into my toy cupboard, rummage around, and I bring out the magic set.
Mm.
And one of the tricks in it was the coin slide, the old coin
I
slide.
remember it. Yeah, it's great.
And there was something happened. I put the little disc in and I closed it up and it disappeared. I just happened to have it the right way round to make it disappear. And do you know what? I was like, magic happened for me. It vanished. It was gone for those few seconds. And of course, I start rattling things around, and I'm like, "Oh, there's something rattling in here. What is that?" I'm a typical man. I haven't read any of the instructions or anything like that. I'm just playing with it. But for that split second, I was bitten by the magic bug because magic happened for me. And I always wondered if there was a 50% chance, if it was around the wrong way and it didn't disappear, it could have all got thrown up in the cupboard again. So, so that's how I got bitten by the bug. And from then onwards, I basically got my parents to. This is obviously in the day before, the internet. But what they were aware of is there was a guy in Ferndown, which was near where we lived. He was in the building industry. He was an estate agent. My dad was a builder, so he knew him. And this guy happened to be Bill Stickland. This was William Stickland. He was actually president of the IBM around about that time. He was never a pro, he was always an amateur, but my dad sort of approached him and he recommended some books. He recommended a local club. And from that point onwards, my parents just bought me books. I mean, over there is the full 7 volumes of the Tarbell course. I had those when I was I think I got a book for Christmas and a book for birthday, and it took just 3 or 4 years to have the whole set, and I read them cover to cover, and there are other books along the way, the Encyclopedia of Silk Magic, the Greater Magic, all of those classic texts, they're all there, and I read them all when I was a teenager, and I did read them. I read them cover to cover. So when I'm watching Paul Daniels on TV doing his magic show, I'm seeing effects that I've started to become familiar with. I see Daniels do aerial fishing, and I know what aerial fishing is. There's a whole chapter in the Theo Bamberg section in Tarbell, and I'm like, wow, this is Paul Daniels is doing something I know, and that sort of that started me off as well. And I didn't take a traditional route. I didn't do close-up magic. I put together a little stage act, and I was part of a youth club, and the youth leader was very keen to sort of, promote that. So I used to go around and do harvest festivals and the Methodist churches and stuff, and I used to get paid £5 for doing my show, and it was a stand-up show, and this will resonate with you because I was just like Ryland, it's exactly the same thing. I had a supportive dad, supportive parents that drove me around and did these things. And already at 13, 14, 15, early teens, I'm performing in front of groups of people. I'm not, and it's not doing close up, I'm doing stand up. I mean, it is like Invisible Deck. I think I did Roy Johnson's Spotted Can. I was doing Chinese sticks, it was stuff like that. But my parents gave me what's called the Ganson book. The Ganson book was, so Louis Ganson was a performer sort of from the 50s, 60s, again, very well sort of known. And in the back of the Ganson book, there is an effect by John Booth, which was a telephone directory test. All right. And for the youth amongst you, yes, we used to have books of telephone numbers. Okay. And I used to close my set as a 15-year-old. It was a telephone directory test. In other words, somebody opened it anywhere, and it was a really clean telephone directory test. It was open at anywhere. I'm going to run my, which column do you want? I run my finger down the column, say stop. All right, what number have you stopped me on? They call it out, and I had predicted the number. I mean, this always used to blow people away. Always. All the adults are coming to me up after, this is the trick they're talking about. They're not talking about Invisible Deck or Chinese sticks or anything like that. They're talking about the telephone directory test. So I had this natural feeling that mentalism is more impactful, from a very early age, really. And also, I looked in the mirror at a very early age, and I was not Paul Daniels. I was not cheeky, chappy, funny, all the lines. For me, magic was about creating amazement. You want to get oohs and ahs, not laughter. Yeah. So that's why the mentalism was always there. And then what happened was, when I left school, I had a normal job for a couple of years, but I was doing gigs in sort of hotels down on the South Coast in Bournemouth, places like that. So again, it's all stand-up at this point. And then I moved to London. Okay, I gave up my normal job, which I did until I was about 20, and I moved to London. I worked for Marvin's Magic. So of course, what that did is expose me to the London crowd. I'm demming every day. I'm Sven's dynamic coins. I'm pitching. I'm having to stop complete strangers and try and sell them a magic trick. That is great training. That is just great training. And of course, I was then introduced to the close-up scene. I really didn't know much about close-up magic at that point. So I used to cover some of the other guys, some of the sort of working pros, because I wasn't any threat. I was just the demo in Harrods or Hamleys or wherever. And I had my proper job, demoing Sven's, and I would just cover the, gigs in the evening. And then did that for about 5-6 years with Marvin. I mean, at one point I sort of worked in the office as well. And then when it sort of came to a natural end with Marvin's Magic, I just had done it for so long. The close-up work was taking off. And then I formed a business with some friends, which is called Dynamic Effects. That was with Paul Andrews, Anthony Owen, and Nick Reed. And we were sort of in the early 90s, the first sort of magic company offering sort of corporate clients, multiple magicians. So, if you had 100 people, 10 tables, we can put in 2 close-up magicians to do it for you, or whatever, so we used to call ourselves a one-stop shop for close-up magic. So that's really sort of how it took off. But I'll be honest, I burnt out doing that. I did that through the 90s, and we were doing it all the time, 3-4 shows a week. At Christmas, like we talked about before this interview, it would be nuts. You'd be doing 2 gigs a day. I remember just being stressed out trying to get from London to Birmingham, and there was a bit of a snowstorm, and it's just horrible, and I always would end up with flu at the end of it. So I was watching people like John Lenihan. John Lenihan in the 90s was coming out. We'd been working and doing close-up at a corporate gig, and John Lenihan was coming out earning like 10 times as much money as us and doing 20 minutes on the stage. And I was like, I want to be that. I want to be that. That's where I want to be. So going back to my teens, I focused in on the mentalism, and I knew I wasn't a funny guy. I wanted to make it sort of more of a serious approach, not overbearingly serious mentalism, but really selling it as something that was more powerful. So that's what I did in the sort of mid-90s. I started tailing off on the close-up. Or actually what I did do is I started upselling from close-up. From close-up, I used to say, well, you're booking us for 500 quid doing close-up, but for another 300 quid, and I'm talking about the prices as they were then, I know it's not like it is now, but for another 300 quid, we could, I'll do a bit of a mentalism mind reading show for you. And then in the space of 18 months, I transitioned from being essentially, a close-up guy to being a sort of after dinner cabaret. So that's it in a nutshell, really. or maybe not a nutshell, in an extended monologue from me.
That's a really interesting journey. I mean, let's unpack a couple of things there before we move on, because obviously you've gone on to do even more amazing things. But I suppose the first thing, the question I get all of the time is, how do you transition from close-up to stage? These days, there's so many people that are wanting to do stage magic, but thought terrifies them. It's...
Yeah. And do you know what? I will be honest. I'll be honest. It is not for everyone. It is fine if you are more comfortable doing close-up. You can earn a great living doing close-up. There is nothing wrong in that at all. It's a great way of making a living. You're doing your passion, and you're making people laugh and amazing people. It's great. I think you do have to be, it's not a personality type, but you do have to be aware that working for a big room is an entirely different beast. It shapes your material. It shapes how you stand, it shapes how you gesture. I mean, I'm talking to you now and I'm moving my hands around a lot, and that actually comes from on stage. It's no good on stage pointing to something like this. On stage, it has to be a bigger action. You have to show what you're doing. And also simple things like getting someone up to perform a trick on. Well, in close-up, that's instantaneous. That person's right next to you. But on stage, they have to stand up, they have to walk along the front, they have to come up a set of stairs, and they have to walk maybe 10 or 15 paces to you.
Yeah.
That is quite terrifying if you're not aware that that is going to happen, you know, because that seems like just dead time. So, so I think part of, if you do want to transition to stage, I think part of it is looking at other performers, and it's not about copying them and their routines, but what you should look at is all of these things. How do they handle a microphone? How do they handle getting people on and off the stage? How do they cover dead spots? How do they communicate something quite small in a large way? How do they engage this entity called an audience? Because this isn't one person, but you want to make them act as if they're one thing. So all of those skills, watch other performers and learn those skills. Because if you've got those skills in place, then you'll feel much more comfortable going into that stage transition. But also start out knowing that it is very different from close-up. You can't really take your close-up set and start doing it on stage. It really is not going to work. You might be able to take some of those tricks, but you've got to think about how you're presenting them. You know, how do you communicate that to a larger audience? And maybe one of the stepping stones, and there is a guy, let me just quickly have a look. It's here. I got this book recently, and it's by John Graham. It's Vanishing Ink, and it's Stage by Stage. And that is his journey. And you know what? It's a great book because he goes from doing close-up to stage. And one of the things he talks about, which I totally agree with because I did it in the 90s, is that when you're performing for a table of 10, make it a parlor performance. In other words, step back from that table of 10 and perform for the whole table. Make that table of 10 an audience in its own right, because that's a great stepping stone. It'll teach you some, certain techniques and ideas about engaging a group of people. So, that's another thing to do. But I would highly recommend John Graham's book. I think he's got some great ideas as well. So yeah, it's, first of all, make sure that's what you want to do. And if it scares you to death, then don't do it. It's all right. You don't have to be a stage performer. But if you feel that's where you want to move, then yeah, my advice is you watch others, and not necessarily magicians either. Watch comedians, watch singers. Just go and watch a good musical. Go and see how that stage is used. Does that sort of make sense?
That's really good advice. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing advice. And I want to ask you another question, because this is a bit of a hotbed thing that's happening in the magic community as well. What's your view? Because obviously you talked about through the 90s you were doing close-up magic, and even though you kind of gravitated towards mentalism when you were younger, when you started doing close-up, it was magic that you did, and then when you went back on stage, you went to do mentalism again, and that's when you basically became the Marc Paul that we know now. My question is twofold. One, what do you think of mixing magic and mentalism? People that are doing kind of very serious mentalism and then following it up with a sponge ball routine, because that's a question that's being debated a lot in the community as well. And second, let's go with that one, and then we'll go with the other ones. Yeah.
I must be a mind reader because I knew you were going to ask that question. And of course, it is one of those questions that does come up. Now, how do I answer it? The only way I can answer it is to give you a personal opinion about it, because also I understand that there are no rules, that you can do this. There are some people that can successfully mix magic and mentalism really well, without doubt. I'm not one of them. Maybe I'm a bit old school. I feel magic is more perfect for a close-up situation. It's more visual, and it engages audiences in a different way. It can be quick. You can do a quick effect. I mean, you know, a quick cut and restored rope routine is a great visual routine that you can do table hopping, you know. A nudist deck routine, you know, cards printing, great close-up effect, multiple effects happen really quickly, very visual, so on. I always felt walking up to a table, you know, I'm the strolling mind reader, you know, here's an index card, can you write something down? Which I know it doesn't have to go that way, but a lot of my mentalism is sort of billets and that type of stuff. It's not the best thing you can do. I always will choose the best material for the environment that I'm in. And I feel with close-up, with all the interruptions that you get, you might be in the middle of a trick and the MC starts up. Well, if you're doing a segmented rope routine, for example, you can stop, you can finish within a couple of seconds, you're done. If you're in the middle of a mentalism routine, you're screwed. I mean, honestly, it's all out the window. You need more audience attention with mentalism, I feel. To take them on that journey of believability. Now, yes, of course, you can go out there and do some mental magic and predict ESP cards or do a book chest or whatever, and all of that is fine. But I feel it's being undersold in that environment. I feel in that environment, it comes across, particularly if you've been doing card tricks and stuff, it's just magic again. It's just another form of magic. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is fine. I am not one of those that go, oh, magic and mentalism. You know, it's like, no, it's fine. It is absolutely fine. If that works for you, it's great. I feel that mentalism has such a power that it deserves that little bit of a pedestal. I feel that the effect and the emotions that are invoked on an audience are more powerful with mentalism. But the context has to be right. And the context of, for example, doing a banquet table is wrong for mentalism, in my opinion. That's all. I feel the best place for mentalism is on stage. I feel where that audience can go on a journey with you for 50 minutes or an hour. I feel they experience something that's much, you know, can be quite profound, really. And you're not going to approach that sort of emotional connection with a table of people. Now, having said that, you could talk up to a table, you know, with a pad of paper and a pencil and your nail writer on your thumb. You know, you go straight in and you perform, you know, some sort of say predicting the number that they're going to think of, and that can kill. Of course, it can. But it's not taking them on a journey like mentalism can do. That's all. So that's really my opinion on it. I think it's fine. I think it can mix. I think some people do it very well. I just prefer not to. I think that the context is wrong in a close-up setting to do some of these things. Now, I've also talked there about sort of corporate close-up setting. So I do know that mentalism does have a power one-on-one in a informal close-up situation. You know, you're at a pub with friends or you're at a party and you're talking to a girl who's into it or whatever. I mean, you can freak her out. You can totally change how she believes about stuff. You know, you could do that with mentalism, but that's different again. It's a personal one-on-one thing. And I don't really work in those environments. You know, I don't really want to do magic or mentalism casually. I do too much of it in a formal environment. So, you know, in my downtime, I just want to be down. So I do understand there's a power there. And there are masters of that, like Pete Turner, you know, with that sort of conversational mentalism that does take you on a journey, does take the spectator on a journey, or rather the participant on a journey, because that's the other thing. It is more of you're participating in what's happening rather than just viewing what's happening, which is what close-up magic is more about. So yeah, I just like stage. I've always gravitated towards stage, and as you heard, I actually started as a stage performer, you know, doing those Methodist Youth Club things. So I think that's why I've always lent in that direction.
That's, again, this is amazing advice. I hope people that are watching this are literally making notes. This is a masterclass. It really is. Um, Let me ask you another question. That's kind of based on what you said earlier on. How do people find their performing character? Like, regardless of magic or mentalism, like you talked about, you looked at yourself and you weren't a cheeky chappy. So, your character works perfectly for you on stage. Anyone that's seen you perform would know that. I know a lot of people struggle to find that character, or how many mentalists did we see dress and act just like Darren Brown when Darren first hit the scene? Like, how do you find that character that makes you unique and stand out?
That is a great question. And it is a great question that everybody has to ask themselves. Really, you've got, and I don't have the solution. All I can say is what you have to be is 100% honest with what you see in the mirror. You have got to accept who you are. If you are 16 years old and you have bad acne, you're a spotty nerd. That is who you are. That's what you look like when you walk on stage. So if you do an act that totally conforms to that look, it will absolutely resonate with the audience. So if you come out on stage, let's say you are 16 and you've got spots, and you come out with a skateboard under your arm, playing with a Rubik's Cube in the other hand, that absolutely works with the image of who you are.
Yeah.
Now, if you are, let's go back to the history books. If you are Channing Pollock, if you are movie star good looks, then yes, you can come out and you can be the romantic lead in your own fantasy that you're doing on stage, which is essentially what, Channing Pollock's doing. It's elegant. He has literally an athletic V figure. He's got a tailored, tight cut tail suit that's cut not so tight that he can't do the loads, but tight enough to look like the loads are even impossible. And that's where it comes from. He's, that tailored look that Channing Pollock had. If you look at him, it looks impossible that he's got like 6 doves on him, because it's so him. And I think that is what gives you an advantage. If you are honest with what you see, and you engage actively with that, and you become that on stage, it actually opens up some possibilities for you. It also tends to restrict your material a bit, because there is certain material you'll look at as your character and you think, well, that doesn't suit my character. And actually, that's a good thing. That is a good thing, because there's so much magic out there. There's so much magic around in the world that actually to be able to say, well, tucking a silk into my hand and turning it into an egg, that doesn't suit me. Great. So we're done with that. We're not going to ever do that trick. It's fine. It is fine. For me, it was always, and I used to sort of joke with my friends about this. I can't take a little red silk handkerchief and tuck it into my hand and make it disappear. That's just not me. As a guy in his mid-50s, what am I doing with this little red silk handkerchief? It's just not. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that vanishing a silk is rubbish. It's not. It's a great trick. It's a brilliant trick. It's just not me. So I can easily cut that sort of effect. And I don't think I've ever done that trick in my life. I don't think I've ever vanished a silk in that way. So the core is look in the mirror and be 100% honest. And it's the honesty that's the hard bit.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And one more question before we move on, which is the question I get on this channel an awful lot are people that are hobbyists, or maybe they've done a few gigs and they're wanting to become full-time, what process they should go through. Now, I found it really interesting in your when you chatted to me, you said in your early 20s, you gave up the job you were doing, you moved to London and worked for Marvin's Magic. Now, I know from speaking to so many people that have worked with Marvin, that experience of Deming just has really been invaluable to everyone I've ever spoken to. Um, but I mean, that's a big risk. Hey, I'm going to give up my job and I'm going to move to London. That's a big risk that you took, which obviously paid off. What advice would you give somebody that's wanting to become full-time and they want to take that leap and they're worried as to when to do it or how to do it? As someone
Well,
who's been there, done that, do you have any advice on that?
yeah, I think first of all, if you're young, yes, take risks. Absolutely take risks. You have to. You've got to get out there and do stuff, you know. And you know, if I look back at my say 19-year-old self, yeah, I would, as an older guy, say, yeah, you made the right choice at that time. Now, as somebody who's got responsibilities, you know, a house, you know, 2 kids, 2 dogs, wife, all of that stuff going on, then maybe that's not, I wouldn't be as reckless. I wouldn't take as much risk now. And I think that's completely fine too. I think when you're
Yes.
younger, take more risks when you're younger because it pays off when you're younger. And you know, if you make a mistake, who cares? It doesn't matter. You're young. It doesn't matter. You know, you just move on, do the next thing, try the next thing. That's what it's all about. So first of all, if you've got a dream, you want to go in a direction, if you want to become a full-time pro, go for it. Honestly, go for it. But there are some practical considerations that you could look at. I did it in stages. When I left school, there weren't the opportunities to do magic out there full time, not where I was living. There was opportunities to do, say, 1 gig a week, you know, but it wasn't enough to sort of live off of. So I got you know, a normal job. Now, what the normal job did was gave me security. So then I can start going out and getting jobs. And if the job, you know, magical jobs, and if those magical jobs don't work out, then fine. And you are constantly looking for a consistent flow of bookings. If you're going to become a pro, that is your goal. It is not to get the highest price you can or anything like that. It's about consistency because that's how you're going to make your living. It's no good charging £5,000 and doing a gig once. I would rather charge £500 and have that gig every week, you know, or something like that. That's the difference. So what happened is when I was in the bank is I'm doing shows for Bournemouth hotels and stuff. And there came a point where actually what I was earning for doing 3 days work in the hotels was the equivalent of what I was earning a week in the bank. So actually I could at that point stop working in the bank and start doing the 3 gigs in the hotels, and my income has not changed. It's fine. And it was like that with Marvin, because right from day one, when I left home and moved to London, because I had been living at home while I had the sort of full-time job. And when I moved to London, I had a little bit of savings, but not much. But what Marvin gave me was consistency of booking. You know, that's what Deming does. It's a full-time job. You're working every day. You're developing those skills. And yes, it can be hard graft. Yes, it can be tough sometimes, but you're developing. You're developing all along. So again, I've got this source of income that's stable, which enables me to then go out and do the gigs in the evening, covering for some of the pros at the time, and building up my own residencies or my own stream of income. And then when that gets to a point where it's working out quite well, you can maybe stop being a demonstrator and do that. So for me, it was always a flow into the next level up, as it were. There is one thing, a piece of advice that Bobby Bernard once gave me, and it was his standard piece of advice that he would give to a young guy that wanted to become a pro. You know, Bobby, what should I do to become a pro? And Bobby was simple as this. He said, first of all, whatever you're doing now, whatever that income is, save up a year's worth of income. So if you're on 20 grand a year, save 20 grand, and that's your buffer, because then you can give up your job and you've got a year to establish your magic career without any stress. You don't, without any financial stress. Now, I must confess, I didn't take that advice, but it's quite sound advice. So if you do have, I stepped from one thing, you know, I had a flow of income, step to the next flow of income, step to the next flow of income. If you want to go straight in, you can do that, but have some savings behind you that gives you the freedom, because it's the savings that, if it doesn't work out at one venue, it's fine. You can totally let go of it. What you don't want to be is committed to something just because of the money. That's not what it's about.
That's amazing. That is absolutely fantastic. So going back to you gave us a brief history of Marc Paul. We got to the point where it was kind of early 2000s.
Yeah.
You'd stepped away from dynamic and close-up magic, and you were focusing more on your career as a stage mentalist. I also know that you literally wrote the book on trade shows. And a lot of people that are doing trade shows now are following your advice and guidance. And
there is an old video out there, if you can still find it. It's I think it's on library.com. I think you can get it as a download. If you are thinking of doing trade shows, I put a video out which was called Trade Show Secrets. And to be honest, that's the blueprint that I follow. It's what I did. It's what I do now. I don't do as many trade shows now, but there was a period of time when I was almost full-time trade shows, you know, and a lot of it was in America, you know, some of it here, but there was sort of more of a gearing to it in America. So, yeah. So did you have a specific question about trade shows, or?
No, just that when I started doing trade shows, I bought that, and it literally changed my life and my approach to, because I knew I don't do them as much at all these days, like you. In fact, I have got one in November actually, but I don't do them anywhere near as much. But there was periods of time where I did a lot, and I envisaged doing a trade show very differently to how you laid it out.
Yeah.
And watching that video and understanding what you were saying really changed my way of thinking about trade shows. And obviously they can get that video, but for anybody who's watching this that's thinking about going to trade shows,
I'll tell you the secret to success. It's quite straightforward. I see a lot of close-up magicians at trade shows, and what they do is close-up magic at trade shows. They do exactly what they would at a strolling party, that type of magic. And that's fine. That is a corporate hospitality booking, and you should treat it just like a normal booking, and sort of charge in the same way. But that's not what I did. That's not what trade shows or the leverage of trade shows is all about. Because what trade shows is all about money. Trade shows can be big money because you're working for big business. It's big business, and they recognize big money. All right. This is not doing a £500 close-up gig for entertainment on the stand. The way you pitch yourself is as a unique salesman. You have a unique way of being able to pull in a crowd to a trade show booth. And when I say a crowd, we're talking 20, 30, 40 people in a crowd around the booth. You're able to educate that crowd about the benefits of the product, and you're able to generate leads from that crowd. Okay. Now you use magic as a tool to do all of this, but the big company, they don't care whether it's magic or whether it's juggling or whether it's something else. What they care about are the leads. You are a lead generator. And if you start generating leads for that business, you are of value to them. You are of real value. So you go from, you know, you're not a £500 close-up magician. You're a £3,000 a day gatherer of leads, because that £3,000 a day is worth it to them. I mean, I used to work for a computer manufacturer. It was a large storage, hard disk storage, basically. And one of their big, their units was like 6-7 feet tall. One of their units would cost $3 million. Now, the number of times where I can literally, there was somebody walking by, I'm stopping that person, I'm drawing them into a crowd, I'm using magic and fun, and we're having a good piece of entertainment with this, but I'm also delivering a message. I'm also telling people about this product. I'm informing them. And I'm also not letting them go. I'm getting the leads. I'm scanning their badges, or in the old days, we used to take business cards or whatever. So I can absolutely put a tag on some of these people. That person was walking by and they would have carried on walking, but I've stopped them, drawn them in, pitched to them, educated them about the product, and converted them later. Maybe later they get converted into a buyer. Now, if they're a buyer of a £3 million product or $3 million product, I'm absolutely worth the few £1,000s that they're paying me to be there. I mean, there was a guy called Anton Zellman. Probably never heard of him. He was a mind reader. He was a magician. Used to do corporate stuff. He became the highest paid trade show magician in America. He used to work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I was going to say he used to boast, but it was fact as well. He used to boast of $1 million contract. He used to work with a pharmaceutical company for a year. He would probably be working most weeks with them, doing 3 or 4 days at a trade show, but his contract with them for the year to promote their product was $1 million. So he's earning $1 million for a year. And magicians had never heard of him, and yet he's going out there. He's doing book tests. He actually had a really unique thing as well. He would teach some memory techniques, and then he would talk about. I covered a gig for him once. And it was when Lipitor came out. Lipitor is a cholesterol reducing drug, and the pitch was not only did you tell them about Lipitor, but they memorized all the dosages and the ratios. So you're pitching to sort of doctors and other pharmaceutical people. So by the end of the pitch, you've used mnemonic techniques so that they all know what the dosages are and the ratios and so on. So they actually go away with value. And the pharmaceutical company loved this. They loved this. And as I said, they paid Anton $1 million a year. And that was one company, one business, to promote their drugs at multiple trade shows through the year.
Wow.
So that's the potential of it. You're not there doing close-up tricks. You're not there to get the oohs and ahs. What you're doing is you're using the magic to draw in a crowd and to entertain that crowd, to hold that crowd whilst you pitch to them and while you generate leads. And if you go into a business with that sort of premise, they will bite your hand off. It's because, yes, that's what they want. They're into marketing. You speak to the person in the marketing department, that's what they need, because they all know that they can just stand there at a trade show and people will just walk by. They just walk by, and they might have a colorful leaflet. They might have an attractive booth. They might even be offering cups of coffee. But nothing works better than a dynamic performer drawing in a crowd, educating that crowd. Now, we're not going to convert everyone to a lead, but everyone leaves that understanding what this company does. So later, there might be a lead that generates 6 months later or a year later, based on the fact that you've educated them about the product. So that's where your power is. So I've never done close-up magic corporate hospitality, and that video, the secrets of trade show magic, is essentially pitching that idea. Your benefit to the company is as a lead generator, and you've got a unique selling point. That's using magic as a tool to draw your crowd in.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for covering that. That video really did help me massively. I want to ask you a question, though, Marc. We've talked about how successful you've been at everything that you've done, which you have been. Marvin's Magic, you were incredible, and then obviously Closeup Magic and stage shows, and right through to now. So my question is, we know you as well as somebody who gives very freely in the magic community. We talked about your 9-hour marathon of incredible material with Alakazam. You know, we mentioned there that you put a trade show video out on how to basically giving away all of your secrets in trade shows. And this is a pattern we see over and over again. My question is, why? Because you don't, it's not like you were like when you were doing trade shows very regularly, traveling all over the world. It's not like you needed a few extra quid from the sale of a video. It's not like when you are doing the Alakazam Academy, for example, you go, well, I'm going to give away all of my material.
I know.
It's got to do with a bit of a handout from Peter Nardi. That's not the case. So what made you decide to go down this route?
I mean, Craig, this year, you know, I mean, I've had Penguin have asked twice. Vanishing Ink has asked if I would do some sort of project with them, and Pete Nardi was asking, you know, with Alakazam. And this year I've sort of said no to all of those projects because at the moment I haven't got anything new to say. You know, when I've got something new to say, I'll say it. Do you know where it comes from, Craig? And I know it might sound a little bit cheesy, but it comes from my passion for good magic. You know, I want to see it done well. I've learned things, and I want to tell you what I've learned because maybe you could benefit from it. You know, that's all it comes from. It certainly has never come from a financial side. I mean, you know, I remember once I released a product and there was some controversy over somebody thought it was going to be exclusive. And then it wasn't exclusive. And it's like, you know, and then I got accused of, you know, oh, well, you're just releasing it to everyone to make money. And literally, honestly, couldn't be further from my mind. It is not important. What I make on releasing a product is like doing a couple of weeks on a cruise ship. You know, I mean, honestly, it's just not financial. It's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I love what I do. And I'll be honest, it's the only thing I know anything about, really. You know, I don't know anything about cars. I couldn't fix a car. You know, the plumbing goes wrong in the house, I've got to call a plumber. I'm not a practical guy. I don't know a lot of things, but I do know about magic because I've immersed myself in it since I was a kid. So, and I fully believe there are right ways and wrong ways to do stuff. I feel that sometimes, you know, that actually it needs to be done like this, you know, because actually that's what works. I mean, I sometimes get on cruise ships and I look at the theatre and I'm like, this hasn't been designed as a theatre. This is a theatre that's been crammed into a space that isn't conducive as a theatre. For example, it's got like pillars. There's pillars, you know. So there's sections of the audience that are either people aren't sitting or they're sat with a restricted view. And you think, well, no, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. You know, and then you go on another ship. I mean, the Queen Victoria comes to mind. The Queen Victoria has a recreation of a Victorian theatre on it. And it's 3 tiers tall and it's not very deep. So you can still cram in, like, I think it's about 900 people, 800 people. I might be wrong on that, but it's a lot of people. It's you know, certainly high hundreds of people. And you know what? You could hold a playing card on that stage, and everyone would be able to see what it is. It's built, and it's right. And I think you can experiment with stuff. You can experiment with some radical new theatre design. Doesn't mean that it's better. And I think this is what I look at with magic. We can come up with new ideas and stuff. And of course, we must do. You've got to move the art forward. But that doesn't mean that everything's a good idea. You know, that's all. So I sort of like to put my sort of spin on it. And I just sort of put out what I feel is, and it's just my view. I'm not saying, you know, you must do this. But for me, it's the right approach or it's the right way to do it for me.
I totally understand. I completely get that 100%. But so all of the material that you've shared over the last few years, and I'm putting you in a very difficult position here, I know, because if somebody asked me this, I wouldn't be able to answer it. But is there, out of everything that you've shared and all the lectures you've done and all the product you've released, is there one thing that you could point at and go, you know what, that is the thing. If I had one product that I've shared to the magic community or one thing I've shared, that is what I'd like to be remembered for. In case anybody's watching this and maybe they haven't seen your material before, where would be a good start? So two parts of that. One, what's your favorite thing that you've put out? And two, where would be a good starting point for somebody who wants to explore your material that maybe hasn't seen you before?
Well, answering the first question, I think it's probably my Penguin Live act, because you see me perform, you see me do a whole show. I'll be honest, it's elements of shows that I put together for Penguin. It's not necessarily a show that I would do on a cruise ship. For example, you see on a cruise ship, I might open with like a magic square. And so I'm not going to put that on a Penguin act because, we all know about that. So I'm not holding anything back. So what I did is I picked the original pieces from my show and put together an act that I did for Penguin, the Penguin Live act. And what you see there is you see me performing, you see the style that I am, which is hard-hitting mentalism, but in a light, it's light entertainment wrapping, it's fun along the way. And I'll be honest, there's one thing on there, the closing thing, which is a routine I call Thought Reader, I wish I hadn't given away. It's such a deceptive piece of performance. But I did give it away because it deserves to be out there. People deserve to know about it, But if you look at the Penguin Live act, every single routine that you see in that show, I still use, and I still use it often. I'm using all those routines probably every week. So this is not something where I've created something and to release. That's what I do. It's just my stuff. So I think if you want to get a view of me and what I'm like as a performer and the type of show and the type of mentalism that I love performing, I think that's the best place, which is the Penguin Live act. Not the live lecture. That's got a load of material on it as well. But the live act is what really encapsulates me. And then to answer the second question, if you're starting out, the Alakazam Academy has got to be the starting point, because within that I cover, as I say, 9 hours of material. It is material, all of it is material that I have used over the years. And there is close-up material, there is close-up mentalism, there is, there is stage mentalism, there is trade show material, there is anecdotes and philosophy about performance. It's all a mix in there. And on there, if you were looking for trade show material, there are two core trade show routines that I've always used, and they're on that act. They're there because they're routines where you can theme them easily to. I wonder if I can show you. I will snip off camera, and I think I can show you. Oh, maybe I can't. Hold on. Yeah. So it's a routine like this. It's 3 envelopes, and it's how do you reach, how do you monetize, how do you measure, and that can be different buzzwords for different companies depending on what they're wanting to do. In fact, I've got another set here. So this is go, faster, and so on, and it's an envelope routine. It's sort of like a just chance routine. It plays great as a corporate piece, and it enables you. It has what I did do with it. I'm sort of slightly going off of answering your question, but what I did on this was when they pick an envelope and you open it up, here are your lines inside. Did you know XYZ company offers the best class in Windows Server 2012 support with innovations in support of blah, 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 blah. You can see that's old, 2012. All right. So you didn't have to memorize either. So what this was a go-to routine. I would use it for every trade show. I could totally personalize it to the company. I could put their messages on the inside for the card. So I didn't have to memorize the messaging either. Now, to me, that's just gold dust. That is worth £1,000 to the trade show performer, you know, really. And it's on the Alakazam tape. It's all there explained in detail and stuff. So Trevor Liley was a trade show performer. He was retired. And when he watched the Alakazam, he said to me, he said, if I was 20 starting out in trade shows, he said, I would do all your material. He said, you've solved all the problems. It's all there. It's ready to go, you know. So so Alakazam gives you a lovely overview of everything. And in that, there's my palette, my passion for billets. And I love billet routines. And I think probably my finest creation is on my Vanishing Ink masterclass, which is a 3-billet routine where no billet is ever opened, and yet you're able to reveal all of the information with multiple hits along the way, but you never visibly open a billet. There's none of this sort of kooky one ahead. Oh yes, I'm right. You know, it is just literally every billet remains closed, you know, firmly closed the whole time. So from a technical point of view, I'm quite proud of that. But it takes a little bit of work to do. You've got to build up the skills to do it. I didn't mean that to sound like a pitch for my products.
No, I'm so glad that you did. I wanted you to pitch it because it's important for people to realize where you can, you know, get your material from. I want to ask you one more question, or two more, but one last question about advice, which is, you're very creative. You know, you just are. The amount of material you've put out, and also how you mentioned at the beginning, you're very creative when it comes to your own shows as well, and creating different messages for trade shows and so on and so forth. For somebody who's wanting to be a creator in Magic, because that happens an awful lot. People come into Magic, they realize there's so much to this wonderful community, and then we put creators on pedestals a lot, and people go, oh, I want to be that guy, I want to be that person, I want to have my name on a box that's in a magic shop in a different country. How would you say that somebody should go around doing that, both being creative for their own act, but also for eventually maybe releasing product? Do you have you know, any advice on the creative process?
Yes. All I can tell you about the creative process is, again, sort of my sort of view on it, and I'm sort of coming at it from a different perspective. A lot of creative people will look at creating a plot, you know, what is going to be the effect, what is the mystery, and then looking at how to achieve it. Do you know what? I'm not that guy. I'm actually the opposite. I love methods. I love methods. I am drawn to principles, to ideas, and a lot of the time, you like. I'll give you an example. Okay, so there is this idea of the matrix principle in Magic. It was an effect put out by Jack London called the Almost Real Prediction. You can easily download it. You know, it's around. I think it's on library.com or whatever. And that principle, you can read Jack London's effect, and you could just go and do that. But the principle, when you look at the method of that, that's such a cool method. And over the years, I've had different framings for that method. I did a thing called the human equation, where it's like, it's 9 people up on stage, and you you mix them up. They're all numbered 1 to 9. You mix them up. They're formed into piles. You eliminate a pile. You take numbers from these, and you build a sum up, and you add it together, and you've predicted the total. And it's all this sort of audience interaction. But it's the same trick. It's the same trick with the same method, but looks completely different. You know, my effect summing up, which is on my Penguin Live lecture, that is the same effect. It's the same principle. And I used to use that effect to open my second cruise ship show for years and years. because it's so flexible. You could predict today's date, you could predict a word, you could do whatever it was, whatever you wanted to force, you could do it. And it was all there on a flip chart. You didn't have to worry about everything. It all gets worked out in advance, and you just go there and present. You know, as I said earlier, I'm a great fan of presenting. I like to have methods that are really easy, really direct, but I can then focus totally on presenting it. So I am drawn to methods. I love methods. And so sometimes I will read a method, and then it's like, how can we make that more? How can we take that into a different direction? How can we make that better, bigger? How can we add more elements to it? You know, and that's really my creative process. I start with something I'm fascinated by. I start with, I mean, you know, this envelope routine I've just talked about, Max Maven has a routine called Coupon Caper. And Coupon Caper was the starting point for this. All of it really boils down to understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are. You know, I'm not great at writing scripts. I'm not great at creating plots. I don't really, you know, I think a lot of the plots have already been created. They're already out there. What I'm good at is being driven by my passion. So if I've got a method that I'm passionate about, I'll explore it in lots of different ways. And you never know, something might come out of it that's really radically different, really interesting. You know, you might go in a different direction with it, but it gives you that sort of core point, and then you can move out of it in a different way. I think what you then, one stage I add to that, which I know not everyone can do, is I listen to my audience. I will put that piece in a bigger set, you know, something where it's, say, in the middle. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't quite, if it falls a bit flat, it doesn't matter, it's in the middle. I will put it in and listen to my audience. Let my audience tell me if that affects any good or not. Because sometimes I've been surprised. Look, I've said this many times before, I hate Magic Square, but I cannot find a better opener than the Magic Square. With Magic Square, I have a rhythm to it. I can hit beats on it that will draw applause and gasps. And I think I can get about 7 or 8 reactions in the first 3 minutes of my show. That's why I do Magic Square. So I listen to my audience, right? So that's important as well. But your question is about creativity. So I think really it's about understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Pursue what you love. Pursue what you're strong at. If you're great at writing scripts, write scripts. Write a script every day. Just write something. It doesn't matter. No one's going to see it. If it's crap, it doesn't matter. Throw it away. Just write the next day. Write something else. Just keep plodding away. And I think what is important is probably some period of immersement in your subject. I mean, there was a period when I was in my early 20s, probably, where everything was magic. I thought about nothing else. I mean, I barely ate food. I mean, it was literally, I'm reading the next book. I'm going to a show. I'm seeing a lecture. I'm attending the recording of the Paul Daniels Magic Show. I'm going out. I'm working a show. I'm going, I mean, you know, in London, we had the Magic Circle on Monday. We had the Zodiac Club on Wednesday. We had the London Society of Magicians on Friday. We would be doing all those. And in the evenings, I would be going out with my friends who are magicians, and we would be talking magic and doing magic. And so there was a period probably of maybe 2 or 3 years. And this was with Anthony Owen, because Anthony, I had a house in North London, and Anthony rented a room out from me. Danny Buckler lived with us for a time. I mean, it was just us in that house talking magic and living off of boxes of cereal, you know. I mean, it was literally that. So I think, and that's, you know, I have such fond memories of that time. So I think that immersement in it is good. It's not healthy for extended periods of time, of course not. And I don't do that now, you know, I'm a family man now. I've got other considerations. But I think it's important. At some point, you need that immersement, that deep dive into your subject, so that you can find what you like, what you don't like, what you enjoy, where your passion is, what direction you want to go in, all of those things.
That's perfect. That's brilliant advice. And I'm going to wrap this up now because I know we've been talking forever and this has been amazing, but I'm going to finish off with the final question, which is, okay, what's next for Marc Paul? Now, what I mean by that is you've had a very successful career your entire life. You've always been ahead of the game with everything. You've led the field when it came to trade shows, led the field when it came to Closeup Magic. Currently, I know that you're doing a lot of cruise ships and but you've also created a lot of magic, and I know, like you just said, you've turned down every major magic producer this year. Everybody wants to work with you. If you decided to retire today, your legacy is set. People will be talking about you in generations to come and your impact on this community. But I know you're not planning on hanging it up anytime soon at all, and why would you? So, is there anything left on Marc Paul's magical bucket list that you
I suppose from a purely sort of egotistical point of view, I think you know, Andy Gladwin was talking to me about the Marc Paul coffee book of mentalism, you know, the big heavy volume that you can leave on the coffee table, you know. Yes. And that I would sort of quite like to have at some point. There's a little bit of a problem though. I've always released material and not overlapped. If I've released something, I might come back to it with a improved version or a changed version, but I generally don't, you know, I don't release stuff again in different formats with different, I just, it's all different. If you buy my stuff, there is very little overlap. You know, you might see my passion for billets and you might see the progression of a 3-billet routine. So for example, on Alakazam, I start talking about Animan's Telepathy Plus and give you a handling of that. In fact, I give sort of 2 or 3 different variations. But at that point, it was not my 3-billet test. The 3-billet test I then put on Alakazam has all these elements in, but it is actually different. It is a different handling and a different presentation. It's an evolved thing. A lot of my material evolves over time. So I do revisit things, but it's evolved into a different form. So yes, the sort of coffee table book, maybe that would be lovely, maybe to do that at some point. But at the moment, I haven't got time to write it. It's like, you know, when do you write that? Where do you write that? I don't know. I mean, I suppose you could argue I'm on cruise ships. You know, I should be using my time to write that, but I don't know if I want to do my free time. That sounds like hard work. You know, I don't know. But I think you're right. We don't retire, but I think as magicians, so many people do not think about retiring. And I think you do at some point have to approach that. You know, you do have to think about that, because a lot of magicians don't have a pension plan. You know, they don't have any sort of equity behind them. They don't have that financial security. You don't necessarily need it because you can always work. You know, performers work into their 70s, 80s. It's fine. It's our passion. We all enjoy that. We can still work. But what if you can't work? That's the thing. So I think you should be aware of it. So I've always saved money. You know, I've always been quite consistent with saving money and try to, in fact, I'll give you, so this is some advice that Paul Daniels gave me. I'll just drop that name there for you. All right. So, but this was generally from Paul Daniels. And I've sort of read it in other books and stuff as well. But it was Paul Daniels that first told me about it. And he told me the secret of having an FU fund. You know, that all you did was you took 10% of everything you earn, 10%. It doesn't matter. You do a gig for 100 quid, you put £10 in the pot. You do a gig for 1,000 quid, you put £100 in the pot. You have, and of course it's not in a pot, it's in an account like an ISA where you're generating interest and it's going to be tax-free and so on. So you want to put it into something that is financially secure and financially makes sense. All right. And it's there, and it's a fund for you. You know, for me, I now don't generally take cruise ships bookings that are too far away. You know, I don't want to sit on a plane for 24 hours and go down and do a cruise ship in Australia. You know, so my FU fund enables me to do that. I've got a fund, so actually I could draw the fee from my fund and put it in my bank account and say, well, actually, I don't want to do that cruise, but I'm going to take that out. There you go. I've done that cruise. You know, it's literally like, I don't want to do it, but financially I'm still in that position. And you know, that's just such a great way to think about it, and a great way to be, because we all do gigs that we don't really want to do. I mean, there comes anytime you're a pro, you know, there are going to be those gigs. You know, for me, it was New Year's Eve parties, nightmare, you know. I mean, you know, you'd be earning like 4 times the amount of money, and it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. So, you know, so it's sort of like, do you know what? I don't want to do New Year's Eve parties. It's fine. It's fine. Look, I'm going to take a bit of money from my account. I'll put it in there. Look, I've done a New Year's Eve party. It's fine. You know?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we do have to all think about retirement. I think putting a percentage of your income away is very wise. And I know I sound like some boring old like man telling you this, but you know what? You need a boring old man. If you're 20 years old, you need someone like me to tell you about this now, because no one told me about it when I was 20. You know, and I've been very lucky. I have been financially astute, and I've sort of kept my tabs on things. But for me, the key was always that constant flow of income. Having constant flow of income, that's what enabled me to create the life and the stability that I have. So will I ever retire? Probably not. I will probably still perform. I will probably do less, because there are certain gigs I just don't want to do, or won't want to do, or just simply don't feel like doing. You know, it's fine. That is fine. Will I still create? Yes, probably, because that passion's there. It came from that period of immersion, so that passion's there. I never push my creativity. I mean, it's not something you know, I don't feel I have to come up with anything, because it's not for anyone. It's just for me. So I sort of like to push it in that direction for personal reasons, but no other reason. So yeah, I think we'll still carry on doing what we're doing, just possibly a bit less. You know, I mean, I think I would like to have more time for magic conventions. I think when I do retire, in other words, when I'm doing less shows, I think I'll do more going to the magic convention. You know, I haven't done magic live for years. I haven't gone to the Blackpool Magic Convention for years. I'm going to be there this year because I'm booked this year. So I'm going to be doing a lecture, and I've got to do a couple of shows, I think. So you know, do more of that. I think, you know, spend more time with my friends in magic, I think probably is the direction I'd end up going in. You know, I've been visiting the circle more recently. There was a period of time where I was away from the circle. I just didn't, there were years, decades where I didn't go to the magic circle, kept up my membership. And then just recently, you know, I've been sort of going more as well. And with Marvin there as president, that's all, you know, it's just such a much more interesting environment now. Yeah, and I enjoy it. I enjoy going to watch magic. You know, we can have a laugh at some things. We can cry at other things. We can engage with other things. We can be surprised by things, you know. And I think that's what it's about. It's still living life as fully as possible and engaging with magic as fully as possible in ways that I want to and don't have to, if you see what I mean.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And the thing that I love that you just dropped in just casually is that you're going to be at the Blackpool Magic Convention.
I am. Yes. So yeah, I haven't been to Blackpool for years. In fact, the last time I think I was at Blackpool was when I performed. I remember catching a cab with Bill Malone. I literally flew, and I think I did my lecture. And Bill Malone was the same. He could only come for a day. He did his lecture, and we both had to go to the airport. So I shared a cab with Bill Malone to the airport, and that was it. I mean, and that has got to be 20 years ago. I maybe more. I don't know. I just haven't been for years.
Well, I mean, very
Not
good.
because I don't want to go. I do want to go, but I'm normally working. I'm normally, it's World Cruise season, and normally around that time I'm working. So So anyway, so I'm looking forward to that. It'll be good.
I'm good friends with Russ Stevens and Russ Brown and Guy Barrett. I'm up in Blackpool
Yeah.
right now, and since they took over, it's just gone from strength to strength to strength to strength. I think you're going to be very impressed when you get there. It's very
it'll be great. They've booked me to do a show, and I am, if I am honest, I am a little bit worried about it because I'm just a jobbing pro. I work for the lay public, so actually to do my show for a whole bunch of magicians, I don't know. It's like, should I put some stuff in for them? Or do I just do my show? That, I sort of feel I should just do my show that you see that I do for the lay public. It's not going to fool people, but then you see what I do. I don't know. What do you think?
I would do your show because what has literally taken.
But magicians want to see Magic Square. It's like, I can just imagine going out and doing Magic Square, and at the end of it, it's like. But anyway.
Well, I know whatever you decide to do, it will be amazing. I can't wait to see you at Blackpool. And honestly, Marc, this has been an incredible interview. Thank you. I've had you on my bucket list to interview for a long time, and I'm so glad you were able to find the time in between everything else that you're doing. And I very much hope that coffee book of Marc Mentalism soon, because there is a space on my shelf for it.
It might be a few years off, but it would be nice. Yeah, it would be nice.
Definitely would. So thank you once again for coming on the channel. If people want to connect with you, or is there a good way to connect with you at Facebook? Or
I'm around. I'm on Facebook. I am a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to social media. I am only on Facebook. I don't have X. I don't have Instagram or anything like that. I'm just, it's never been of any use to me, really. I'm sort of a bit old school with how I promote myself, because I work through agents and stuff like that. So generally, I don't do sort of self-promotion. But so I'm on Facebook. But you can also email through my website, which is marcpaul.com. So, it is a corporate website, but if you, or just email me direct, which is just marc@marcpaul.com. It's just normal, easy, that just comes through straight to me. So marc@marcpaul.com, Marc with a C, obviously.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible interview. I really appreciate it, Marc. And everybody that's watching this, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to leave a comment down below. Let Marc know what you thought. I have loved this interview. And then if you haven't already done so, go check out the Penguin Live Act. Go check out the Alakazam Academy. Put a couple of days aside, and then the Vanishing Ink Masterclass and everything else, because it is pure gold. But one more time, Marc, thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Craig. And I really appreciate you asking me. So thank you.
No problem. Guys, on behalf of Marc Paul, thank you very much for checking out Magic TV, Talk Magic. We'll be back again very, very soon with another video. I'll be back next week with another interview. Until then, I'm Craig, this is Marc, and this has been Magic TV.